Razer just updated their mobile telescopic line with not one, not two, but three different new models. And in this video, we'll look at what they share in common and what makes each of them different. We'll follow that up with testing the controllers, giving you my inputs, which one should you go for, should you go for one at all. And on screen, I'll put a screenshot of each controller's unboxed, and you'll see that they share pretty much the same thing, but there are a few key differences. The Kishi V3, the Kishi V3 Pro, the Kishi V3 Pro XL. These two, the two Pro ones, will share more in common, but they all have certain things that distinguish them. Before we start going into what makes them identical and what differentiates them, Razer sent all three for review. That has no impact on my opinions, no money change hands, and they see the video at the same time as everybody else. You may have noticed spacers. They'll have different height, different width, essentially to be able to have a tight fit depending on the thickness of your phone, the length, or how much space you have if you're using a case. World first, very important to mention, all three of these controllers, regardless of which model you go for, they each have TMR sticks, essentially Hall Effect 2.0. And if you've ever experienced a stick drift, or if you know what it is, where your stick moves on its own without being moved physically, well, you'll know that Hall Effect eliminates this issue. TMR goes a little step further. It takes a little less energy in terms of just being used. It has higher resolution on average. It's more responsive and reliable. It also has a better linearity. Having a one-to-one value to your sticks to what will happen on screen will be better with these. And so all three models have TMR in both the left and right stick, which is indeed a world first. We've never seen that in telescopic mobile controllers. Each of the three have analog triggers. If you push them down, you're gonna have that graduality. So if you're playing a racing game and you wanna have great control over your brake and acceleration, all three controls have that feature, and all three of them have those two extra back buttons that they qualify as mouse click like. And indeed, they are a very short travel micro switch, very responsive and very easy to click on. All three models will work for Android, iOS, and PC, and even though it doesn't says it on the box, all three models did work for Mac. It's not guaranteed to work across every games. The app is not supported at all, so I think that's why they're not putting it on the box. But if you're buying this and you have an iPhone or an iPad but also a Mac and you're wondering if it's gonna work, in my testings at least, it has. They all use the Razer Nexus app to change the values of buttons in your sticks and customize the experience of your controllers as a whole, but also it can be used as a game launcher, giving you a very console-like UI experience for you to navigate both your controller and your games when playing. They all have USB-C pass-through. If you connect this to your phone and you have a power brick connected to this USB-C here, it'll charge your phone while you're using it. And so you can keep your device powered. You also have a 3.5mm jack. But another thing, and something that is actually quite rare in the telescopic market, very few companies have that feature, is that the USB-C that you have here is bi-directional for both charging and data. And what does it mean is very simple. Usually, most telescopic controllers, to be able to use on a PC, you have to go through this connector. And so you need to have a special type of cable that is USB-C male to USB-C female. With all three controllers, you don't need that. You can use just any regular USB-C cable and plug that directly to your PC, and you'll be able to use this like any other console controller. If you look at them, you can tell that they are different in width, but if I grab this one, if I grab this one, if I grab this one, they all feel pretty much the same in ergonomics. There are probably very small distinctions, probably due to the fact that you have some extra buttons on top on some and not on this one. So it might change the way that you're going to hold it a little bit, but as far as the ergonomics as a whole, they feel exactly identical. When it comes to pulling rate, is they all share up to 1000 Hertz pulling rate. And before we talk about what makes them different, let's talk about the last thing that they all share, which is what they don't have. They all don't have gyro. And so, moving your controller to aim, they don't do that. They all do not have a trigger stop or hair trigger. And a trigger stop, what it is it'll make it so that you don't need to push down all the way, and rather you have a button feel, or it's shortened and you're still going to be able to aim and shoot in your games, for example. They all have done away with the RGB. There is no more RGB on any of the three models, which was the case with the Kishi Ultra. So we went over all the things that they share, and now let's talk about all the things that do differentiate them. And the first thing is, while they all use spacers, as I showed you, only the Pro and Pro XR have 2 extra sets of spacers. The regular V3 only has 1, but they all have options. If I push this button, it's a very short travel tactile style button, or a dome switch if you're familiar. It has a little less of a pleasant feedback, a physical feedback. It's also harder to like fast click, very short travel, so they'll be responsive, they'll work just fine. If you put importance to the feel of your buttons, you're gonna have a better one here, where much like what you have in the back buttons, you also have micro switches here when it comes to your face buttons. But I would say that these, thankfully, have a little more travel to them, and so they feel really, really nice. When looking at your D-pad, it's kind of the same thing. Here we have a tactile style D-pad, whereas here we have a micro switch. I don't want to say noisy, but you definitely hear this one more. And you also notice that the shape is different. These two have more a satellite with still having the cross pad being here. It's going to be easier when it comes to, like, for example, playing fighting games and you're trying to do like a Hadouken or these types of things. They'll work better for that. They're also going to be easier to move to your adjacent arrows, as opposed to this one where I need to apply way more pressure to the point that it's almost not feasible at all. So we mentioned they all have the extra back buttons, right? And they do, but one big difference is that you also have top bumpers. And so while it doesn't have hair triggers, what's interesting is that you could easily remap these buttons to act as your hair trigger. The regular V3 does not have that option at all. This is something that was on the Kishi Ultra and the Kishi V2 Pro as well. They removed it on the regular V3. That is more in line with the regular V2. If you look at the ergonomics in comparison to what the V2 was, this is much improved when it comes to the overall feel, but it's something that has not been brought, at least to the entry point of this controller line. If you're a big Rumble head like I am, you'll know that Razer has phenomenal haptics in their controllers. The implementation is a little hard to work with. When it works, it feels phenomenal. The regular V3 does not have haptics at all, just like the V2 compared to the V2 Pro. That was one of the big differences. Well, here it is the same. You do not have haptics in the V3. Effectively, very much like HD Rumble from Joy-Cons. The one thing to keep in mind is you're not really going to have games that supports your HD data line of Rumble. So you're not going to get the nuances that you're getting on a Switch because games are not designed with that nuance in Android. But if it were to be the case ever, or if there are games that have like special proprietary collaboration with Razer to bring Sensa HD haptics, these controllers could easily support HD Rumble. Rumble only works on Android. If you're using this with an iPhone or an iPad, you will not. And then the obvious, right? We're going into the obvious that jumps to the eye is they don't have the same dimensions, but they're also not exactly designed to support the same set of devices. So take, for example, the regular V3. It fits super nicely. It gets underneath those little spacers here to hold the phone tight, but this is a little too thick, so I'm just going to remove it. Now what I could do is grab one of the other ones and just install it there, but for the time being, just to keep that easy, I'm just going to use it without a spacer at all, and you'll be able to tell that this is also an option you do have. While I can stretch it further, there's a limit to how far I can go. One of the very obvious differences, especially if you are into smaller form factor tablets, here I have, let's see, this is the Red Magic Astra, which has a very weird placement for its USB-C, but that's not here nor there. The point is to show you that if I want to fit it in this controller, I absolutely can. But if trying to install it on the regular V3, there's not enough clearance. And so that's another benefit that you have with the Pro and Pro XL model, is that you're going to be able to support more and more devices as you go, especially when going wider. But you do have to keep in mind, while the XL would work for a phone, it's way too large as it is to be able to be used, except if I was to use a super thick piece of foam or a spacer. While it does say iPad and tablets in general, it's not so much that it's not gonna work, it's just that it's not gonna fit. You 3D print a spacer of some kind, you definitely could use that as an option. It's just, it's gonna look a little funky, and the weight is gonna be shifting a little bit. So the ergonomics, while it will feel the same, the weight proportions might feel off. I can easily slap an iPad into that and play with this controller, and that's the goal. And what you see here is the largest form factor iPad Pro, and so you're not going to be missing out on this tablet. However, if you're trying to go Tab S8 Ultra or Tab S9, S10 Ultra, the larger model, the 14-inch, it's not gonna work. Essentially, Razer guarantees that up to 13-inch, you should be good to go. If you have an Android tablet that is said to be 13-inch, make sure to verify the width of the tablet. Even though it says 13-inch, the iPad is not exactly a 16:9 or 16:10 aspect ratio. And so if you were to grab, for example, one of the OnePlus Pad, which I believe is like 12.9-inch, you might think, oh yeah, that's gonna work just fine, but it won't, because the width of the tablet, because of the aspect ratio that it has, is much wider. Because these controllers don't have the swivel connector, you do want to make sure to have a little bit of clearance, because if you like just get it by a millimeter, it's still not gonna fit, because you need enough clearance to be able to slide it in and not damage the connector when you remove it. That's definitely one thing I'm not a big fan with these controllers, is because you don't have the swivel connector. Sometimes if the angle is not right, taking your phone out or your tablet out feels like you could be breaking the connector or breaking the connector of your device, which would be even worse. So that's one thing I do wish they would change. I was hoping it was going to be the case in the newer model, but we can see here that it hasn't been changed yet. That was a lot. Let's now focus on using these controllers, is setting it up. We talked about the spacers, and this is something you can do. You can also change the caps, not on this model, but on the other models you can. Now, none of them have metal rings or anything like that, but you do have anti-skid rings on all three of them, so they glide very nicely. But if I was to look at this one in particular, the Pro, I can also lift the cap like that, something I wouldn't be able to do on the regular V3. And of course, we have two options to choose from. One is the same in terms of the shape, but it is higher. And so especially for people that aim, if you like to use things like a control freak, you'll know that having a higher stick gives you more range for your aim. But you also have a mushroom style cap if you prefer the, old school PlayStation controller. And what we'll do now is go grab the software so that I can show you guys what it looks like. You can always access your software by pushing this button, as long, of course, as the app is installed. It goes without saying. And so here we'll have the initial, terms of service and everything. When it comes to software, there are specific things that I won't be covering in this video, which is the screen mapping for Android, but they also have a PC app that you can use to stream your games. Much like Moonlight, there are other solutions on the market, but if you want to keep something all within the Razer Nexus app, they now offer their own solution, which is a cool touch. You can bring your PC games into the app as individual titles. If you'd like to see a video about that, let me know in the comments, and I'll definitely consider it. And then they want you to add your games, which you have to keep in mind, this is a controller, right? So you don't have to do all that. If you just want an experience that is plug and play, just jump into your games, you don't have to install the app. You don't have to go through all that. This is really optional, but it will give you a richer, a greater experience if you take the time to do all these different things. Some options of games. So they'll also recommend games that could be great to use. The way that they want you to add game is very simple. You're going to boot a game that you're trying to play. For example, if I go into Minecraft and from there, I just push the Nexus button, there you go, Minecraft has been added. I could do the same with Shovel Knight and just push the Nexus button here, and voila, it's been added. And from there, you can just go ahead and boot it. You can favorite titles, so eventually if you have a lot of them, you can have another row that is just for your favorites. You have a pretty nice, compelling UI that can help you discover new titles, that can also help you classify your titles by, all the ones that you want to add, as well as the one that you can favor. With all three models, although I believe the Pro XL comes with 6 months, but each models also comes with 3 months of free Apple Arcade. Most titles, to not say all that I've tried, always support controller, and you can also start on your phone, continue on your iPad with the same save game, even an Apple TV if you have one, or Mac, because that subscription is across all the devices that you may have that supports the Apple Arcade subscription. But sourcing your game is not as important as how it's gonna feel once you actually play them. I mocked Razer on my Kishi Ultra review because I wasn't too keen on the God tier mobile controller, but at least when thinking of the Pro and Pro XL, frankly, it is accurate. And I tend to be harder on larger companies because they're gonna charge you more. That's just the way that it is. And I'm okay with that as long as they give you more. And these controllers, again, specifically Pro and Pro XL, absolutely deliver on the experience. There are so many things we haven't scene, 4 extra buttons, TMR sticks, Sensa HD aptics that also includes an audio mode. But here's the problem that I have. Many of these benefits you'll have to compromise depending on where you play. For example, you don't get Rumble on Apple devices, and when thinking of TMR sticks, you cannot play games like Call of Duty Mobile on Android, not because Razer can't, but because there are some backdoor deals in that game specifically on Android as to which controller you can use. And unfortunately, Razer controllers will simply not work. And that'll be the case for many games, especially in the FPS genre. And so while you do have TMR, you're gonna lose the benefit. But when I'm over on Apple devices where those limitations are not present due to the API of Apple and how they use controllers and their devices, it's shocking how good this is for Call of Duty Mobile as an example. And so those sticks are clean. And then you have the phenomenal pulling rate. Regardless of if you're on Apple or iOS, if you intend to use that controller on your PC, oh, you will love it. You will absolutely love it. And that's another benefit. Now, when it comes to price, the V3 is $100, V3 Pro $150, and V3 Pro XL $200. And that's another caveat, is that you are segmented. If you want to cover both your tablet and phone, you will absolutely need to have at least 2 controllers. Now, if you go for the V3 Pro, which would be my #1 recommendation, at least you can also cover small form factor tablets such as the Y700. But as far as features, you're not really missing out on anything else except just stretching as wide as you can. And so my conclusion is this. These 3 are easily the strongest offering that we've seen from Razer, and it's not perfect. I'm not trying to imply that it is, but they have many things that makes them stand out on the entire landscape of telescopic mobile controllers. And finally, I feel like Razer lives up to their brand, to their name. I am super surprised with the quality of these controllers. If you are into competitive scene and you want to stick to wired, yes, the price is a little hard to digest, but at this point in time, I don't think there is better on the market. But if you're looking for features and versatility, they're also not your best options, and they also won't play as nice depending on the platform. I would recommend them primarily if you're on iOS, iPhones, and iPads. I do feel this is where you'll get the most out of them. Of course, you lose the rumble, but those sticks and just having a greater compatibility with your titles is just gonna give them that much more value, which ultimately I think is gonna be the most important thing. And so let me know your thoughts. Are you looking to pick one up? Do you have one? Do you have the Kishi Ultra? Do you feel like it's a good enough upgrade to jump to the newer models? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you very much for clicking and watching the video. I'm Clef for Game Tech Talk, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.